Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, I love talking to this guy. It's George Whittam. He is the engineer to the Voiceover stars, and he's got serious advice for us about microphones and microphone interfaces, and the whole business of recording from home and making it sound good in broadcast. That's coming up next on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store, with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics, with the Bionic Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. By Nautel, worry-free transmission you can count on with outstanding control, reliability, efficiencies, and Nautel's unmatched 24/7 customer support. Online at nautel.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to that light bulb at the top of the tower. Hi, I'm Kirk Harnack in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm in the Telos Alliance studio here in Nashville. See, it is a beautiful end of summer day. Temperatures are cooling down. It's great here. I've heard from some of the people who have gone through the hurricane, Hurricane Milton, in the Tampa, Florida area, and at least the ones I've heard from said that they've come out okay. Generators are running. Their STLs are doing okay. They're on the air. We may get a live update sometime during the show from Dave Anderson, but I'm not sure if he was awake most of the night. So we'll look and see for that. But no matter, the show we're going to do has been scheduled for a while, and it's with our good friend, someone that you have met before if you've been on the show at all, 2 or 3 times now, and that is my buddy and yours, George Whittam, voiceover engineer to the stars, or engineer to the Voiceover stars. Hey, George, welcome in. Good to see you.
Hey, thanks for bringing me back again. I think this is my third or fourth official guesting on the show, but it's always great to see you again, and we go way back. So last time I saw you in face-to-face was NAB, and I'm sure I'll see you again, right, in 2025, hopefully.
You know, I was thinking I hadn't seen you in a long time, and then I realized, wait a minute, we did a show with George. Well, you did a cameo. You did a short, 10, 12, 15-minute appearance from NAB.
Cameo.
Yeah, that's right. And you kind of did a big explanation of a voiceover booth from NAB. You produced a little package, if you will, in the TV biz. We'd call it a package for us.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I was there hanging out with the vocalbooth.com company and showing their wares and just talking about how voice actors need better sounding studios and all that. So, that's my main bag is and has been for many years is supporting the voiceover community with better sounding studios, better workflows, easier to use equipment, pain-free production workflows, that kind of thing. And that is my beat, right? But also setting up some podcast studios from time to time, helping Mr. Beast get better audio quality on their YouTube channel. These little shows occasionally fall in my lap. It's rare that I get things of that nature, but, I'm here for it. Bring it on,
We got one Inside Baseball here, and then I'm going to preview what George is going to talk to us about during the show. Inside Baseball is this. We've had a little audio difficulty, which is really weird for, an audio engineer like me and an audio engineer like George Whittam.
It happens to the best of us. That's the point, right?
Apparently so. Suncast is at the controls, and he's doing his best to control things, but there may have been a software update that none of us could control and didn't know it might have been a problem. And so if you're hearing perfect audio, it's because Suncast has done a fantastic job of merging locally recorded audio. I'm recording audio right now, so is George, and Suncast may be putting those things together. If you're hearing distorted audio, well, that's because that didn't get done. So, bear with us. And if it's perfect audio, which I hope it is, then that's going to be just terrific. So that was the Inside Baseball. Now, George, what you and I are some things that I suggested, maybe we chat about. Normally you work with voiceover artists, and they may or more likely may not be involved in radio broadcasting. This show tends to be watched by radio engineers. Sometimes we get to work with voiceover artists, people who do that kind of work from home or from pro studios. But we like to take your, your advice and your experience and apply it as we can to the people who radio engineers like myself and like most of the other viewers and listeners deal with. So we're going to talk about home studios, and we've talked about that before. But what's changed, what's continuing, what looks like it's going to continue to be a trend. I mean, we're well past COVID, but and we certainly had a lot of changes, during COVID and how people worked. Let's see what of those things are sticking and what of those things we've learned. So we'll talk about that. What are home-based talent concerned with these days? What are some of your go-to technologies and equipment selections? We're going to talk about microphones. Everybody loves to talk about microphones. It's a favorite passionate subject. Oh, which microphone should I get? And then we should talk a little bit about real-time audio connections. Your codec style connections. What's involved? What's happening with those lately? Where do things stand? So and finally we'll end up talking about remedial fixes for studios that need remedial fixes. So those things are all coming up. So George, stand by. I'm going to do a quickie little ad here for our first sponsor, and that is our friends at Nautel. Now, George doesn't get to deal with Nautel very much because he's like in the studios. He's in the comfort zone of the studios. Well, Nautel is oftentimes the non-comfort zone. It's out there at the transmitter site, on top of the mountain, on top of the hill, at the end of the really poorly maintained road. There sits a little building and a tower and a Nautel transmitter to keep you on the air. And Nautel reminds us that they're still doing their HD radio test drive. You can participate in this too. Let's say that you have a station, you have a bunch of stations, and none of them are doing HD radio, or maybe only one is. Well, HD radio is still a thing, and more cars have HD radio. Not every car owner knows that. You can be helpful in fixing that. But the HD radio, digital radio test drive, the Nautel HD radio test drive, lets you put HD radio on your station on a trial basis for 6 months at a lot less cost than it would be just to jump in whole hog, so to speak. So it's a minimal cost option to get your HD radio transmission going. You can test new revenue generating opportunities with your sales team. You can try new formats and new languages, short-term pop-up event stations. You can see the impact on listener retention and engagement when album art or graphics are displayed on the auto dashboard, and you can counter competing alternate media. Hey, just to give you an idea, here in Nashville, where I live, there's a whole lot of AM stations that are playing Hispanic programming. You got your bachata, your salsa, your merengue music. Man, put some of that on HD radio, and you're going to get some listeners on HD radio with, HD digital quality instead of AM quality. You could attract some listeners here, just saying, Nashville broadcasters. So also you can get real world market data on up to 6 months of your trial time. What do you need to get started? Lease or purchase a Nautel GV2 transmitter or upgrade your existing GV transmitter to a GV2. You get an Xperi main station or equivalent license, an assigned trial agreement with Nautel, and then, hey, produce some content for maybe an extra channel or two to put on your HD radio. It's really cool. Check with your Nautel rep on how to get this done. We're doing HD radio in my little market where we are in Oxford, Mississippi, and we're playing oldies on HD2, and we have an urban AC on our HD3 in addition to our HD1 carrying the FM, which is alt rock. Check it out from Nautel.com. Thank you, Nautel, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, George, I wanted to talk about today's studios. We learned a lot during COVID. At least I think we did. You were pretty active, still are. What have we learned that's sticking?
Oh yeah. Well, for the majority of my clients, so the people that keep me busy, the COVID time was just situation normal. So they were all working from home anyway and already. So it was not that big a deal. It was all those who were in Hollywood, doing animation, who kind of the lunch pail voice actors, union talent. They go into the studio, they punch a card, they punch their time card, they do their voice work, and they go home, right? That is still a thing in Hollywood, like in show business, and probably in New York as well. That is the part that really changed. Like that, they had to scramble. They were going under a tremendous learning curve very quickly. And what happened was all the studios and the engineers were also having to adapt and learn how to not only do good quality work that could still be used on production for television and film, but also show voice actors who sometimes are in their 60s, 70s, who knows, and just have never had to do this and have and get that quality audio while they're working from home. So that was a humongous adjustment for a segment of our voiceover population. But for the workaday ones, the ones that turn around, e-learning and corporate and radio imaging and do all this kind of work from home, promo, trailer, and a lot of commercial, it was just situation normal, right? So there wasn't that much of a learning curve. The learning curve was really just for a segments of the industry that just had to adapt in extremely short period of time.
You bring up a good point that I guess couldn't be overemphasized, and that is that in the whole voiceover world, there are way different situations and different levels of quality that are expected out of a home-based or small studio voiceover situation. As you mentioned, you've got your people who do trailers or do animation voices and all that kind of thing, and I guess really perfect quality is expected out of those. Whereas if you're doing voice tracking for a radio station, you don't want anything to sound bad, but it doesn't have to be absolute to meant to be perfect either, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what determines how important sound quality is going to be a few things. One, budget, right? That's obvious. Higher the budget, higher the sound quality. But maybe less obvious is how ephemeral the content is, right? So the most ephemeral content of all is live radio. It goes out and it's gone, right?
It's gone forever.
And so our primary goal with live radio or radio in general, and now streaming on the web in a radio format that we're streaming on the web, is getting the audio out clearly, loudly, and understandably by as many people as humanly possible. That's the goal. With voiceover, let's say, for example, it's a video game. This is the polar opposite, where quality is absolutely paramount. The quality of the room tone, the room acoustics, the microphone being used, the mic technique being used, all of this is absolutely paramount and micromanaged by the production team in a way that I don't think I'd ever seen before. And because if you think about it, that audio is being heard by millions of people, in some cases, millions of times, right? So if it's like an impact sound, a body, like an oomph, or like some kind of a sound effect or a dying battle cry or whatever the heck it is, that sound is being heard many, 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 many times. Like it's used, basically it's a sample, right? And that's being used thousands, if not millions and millions of times in a gameplay. And then that's being played back through very high quality headphones, because gamers these days use really good headphones. And so the sound quality is paramount, right? And then on top of that, they don't want the actor to do anything to the audio, right? You're not allowed to process it. You're not allowed to compress it. You're not allowed to use noise reduction. You have to send in pristine audio from home. And that is a much higher pressure cooker situation for an actor who maybe could normally just get away with something of a little bit lower quality because they're recording and sending. If you're recording and sending, you have this opportunity to do a little bit of post-production wizardry to the audio, clean things up a little bit before you send it on, right? That's a whole different... So that's what's so difficult about voiceover as a quote-unquote industry, because it's not an industry, it's a community, or it's a craft that fits into tons of different industries. And all these industries, whether it be audiobook publishing or radio imaging or corporate narration or e-learning or YouTube content, all of them have these different standards and expectations. It's a crazy business.
you made a point, and I just can't quit thinking about the ephemeral things, like doing a voice track on a radio station that's going to be heard by a few hundred or a few thousand people, and then it's gone. It'll never be ever heard or played again. It was only good for that one time. Versus James Earl Jones saying, "This is CNN," and how many millions of times millions, or at least hundreds of thousands of people was that heard, right?
Do you know there's a story behind that? Do you know the story behind that soundbite?
No.
And you guys can verify this, fact check me all you want, but I remember hearing, somebody told me this a while ago, and then when he passed away recently, I kind of re-earthed this story. But that was something he recorded, and I love to use this, I love my word, extemporaneously. That was something he used or recorded extemporaneously. It was probably one of those things where he was at the studio being interviewed, and near the end or after the show, you know how they say, "Hey, will you record a couple liners for us?" And so he dropped that liner, whatever, did it kind of casually. Well, it ended up sticking, and it became literally the voice logo of CNN. Did he know about that? No. Was he asked if he wanted to do that? No. Was he remunerated for that? No, or remunerated for that? No. Yeah. And so that became a big drama many, many years later. And he eventually was, I think, reimbursed, or, that was settled. But that was kind of it was a little bit of a weird situation, as I understand the story goes. So, but
wow.
That kind of stuff is, if you're the voice of a brand, and that voice on that brand is used, a million, billion times, that, one of my clients did a promo for the show, Mad Men, right? Mad Men.
All right.
And he told me one time he sat there and recorded the words Mad Men for like a half hour, because they didn't quite understand that they thought he was saying mad man, not mad man. And it was just the pronunciation of a single syllable in the middle of the name of the show that they sweated over. And they kept saying, "I don't think it sounds like Mad Men. It sounds like Madman." And he told me about this like 15 years ago. Rick Wasserman is his name. He's still a good friend of mine. And that's the kind of craziness that happens when sometimes the shorter the script and the more people who are on the call, the worse of a session it's going to be for you as an voice actor.
I was scrolling through my YouTube selections the other day, and I ran across that clip where William Shatner and the producer kind of get into it, Remember that one? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He was notorious. Yeah.
And then one of the most famous, I thought of this when you mentioned the situation with James Earl Jones, was when somebody handed Ronald Reagan a slip of paper near the end of a news conference, and he said, "Well, whenever I'm in Des Moines, I always listen to," he did a liner, and they recorded it.
He did a liner, and it was used. Yeah,
he did it. Yeah, it was used. I don't think they were careful not to let that happen again. But somebody just handed him a slip of paper. "Oh well, whenever I'm in Des Moines, whatever city it was, I don't know what it was."
I wonder if that's what, awesome. I wonder if that's what they were making fun of in the movie Anchorman with Ron Burgundy. They're saying, you got to be careful. Whatever you put on that prompter, he's going to read it. You remember that joke? And they fed all sorts of horrible stuff. They was like, "F you, San Diego." It was
like, to watch,
and everybody in the production room just went ashen. And the producer was like, "Oh no!" And his life literally falls apart after that, right? So
I gotta watch Anchorman again. Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. So follow-up question: What these days, when you get a call, an email, a request from one of your clients, either a new or existing one, what are some of the more typical things that people are looking for from you these days?
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, way too much of it is, why the heck is my computer doing this? Why is my audio distorted? Why are there glitches? Should I update my software? Is it time to update my Mac OS? If I get a new Mac, will it still work with my Apollo? My Apollo doesn't work anymore. My settings in my Apollo disappeared. It's almost all software. It's almost all glitches, updates that happen when they didn't expect them, updates that they did by mistake, or they just said, oh, shiny Sequoia is out, new Mac OS. And then they click and then they install it. And then they find out, oh, guess what? That 7-year-old software you're using is no longer compatible and you can't use it. That's the stuff that keeps us really busy, whether it's Windows or Mac. That's the stuff that this is the stuff that's the most, like, I would say, mundane, right? It's not creative. It's not interesting. It's not, setting up an EQ curve, which I love, setting up people's processing. No, it's just that annoying tech glitchy stuff. And it's happening because the hardware companies like Apple and Microsoft that make the computers, they're on this like release schedule, man. We got to keep selling widgets. So Apple's got to sell a brand new computer and a new OS, and they got to ship that sucker every fall like clockwork, whether that thing is absolutely vetted and tested or not. And then we all have to catch up. We all, like the users, the developers, the hardware manufacturers, the guys that write the drivers, and it happens every year. Every year. It's like a cycle, And it's not like I want the computer to be an appliance, right? I gone are the days, all right? You guys see them on my shelf. Here they are, right? Here's a stack of Zephyrs.
I see them.
There's the 9202. There's the Extreme MXP or MX or whatever. That level of hardware, where the firmware and the hardware is locked down and isn't going to change one iota year after year, that's a long gone ancient history for home studios. And you tell me, Kirk, but isn't that why, like, in radio production, they still use things like the Systems 360s or like hardware-based devices for doing a lot of their editing? Is that still a big thing for reliability's sake?
I don't think that's a driver. All the radio stations that I engineer for, we're all using various editions of Adobe Audition or Audacity, just whatever the person's comfortable with or that we tell them we can afford.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, you don't know Audacity? Well, you're going to learn it because it's free.
So. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't knock Audacity. We've done some classes on Audacity on our website. We have a whole library of content for learning stuff like Audacity. And it's the thing I don't like about it still is that it's not that it's free. It's that because it is free, support isn't going to be stellar. You can't go to a tech guy. Whereas I use this other application I used for doing a ton of video stuff called Descript. And literally, if something is funky, I do chat. Within 5 to 10 minutes, a chat window pops up, and there's a live chat tech there, and I can say, why is this behavior happening? Or what's going on here? Or where's that thing? Yeah. And they answer your question, and you're back to work. I mean, that level of support is crucial for meeting deadlines and doing tech support. So whenever there's a software out there and you pay a subscription, a lot of people push back on that, right? And I understand that. But think about what you're getting in return for that subscription, right? Some things are less likely to support you than others, but if it has that kind of on-demand help when you need it, that subscription is gold, right? Getting that support when you need it is gold. So, that's a big part of why software is good. It's not just well written, it's well supported, and so Audacity's well written. It's very good, but support, you're just going to have to go on Facebook groups, and hope for the best.
Yeah. I've got a friend who's non-technical. He uses a Windows 10 PC and NVIDIA card and Premiere Pro, and he uses support a lot because things mess up on him a lot. I think he clicks things he probably didn't understand, and things don't work right, and he's always running out of hard drive space all the time. Because, you need to delete all these files here, Mr. Smith. Anyway, hey, we're talking to George Whittam. We're talking to George Whittam about the whole voiceover world, and we're going to get into technicalities here coming up next. I'm going to ask George some key questions like what are his go-to technologies and equipment choices these days, and we're going to talk about microphones. And I'm sure George has some favorite ones and some non-favorite ones. We'll talk about that coming up in a minute. Our show This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by Broadcast Bionics, and they've got a system that will automate camera switching switching in your radio studio. So you can use this either if you broadcast a whole show live, stream a whole show, or if you just want to pick up, those exciting moments when a caller wins something or there's something really funny going on in the studio. Either way, Camera One is your good option. We'll find out more about it right now.
Camera One from Broadcast Bionics. Designed to bring video to your audio content. Visualizing radio and podcasts for social media. Camera One can automatically create, capture and brand professionally switched video for live streaming or upload, making your production shareable. Control and configure using a web browser on any device. Camera One is available as a 4-camera or 8-camera system using the Blackmagic A10 Mini range, including the A10 Mini Extreme. You can use cameras to suit your studio and your budget. You'll need one camera for a studio wide shot and usually one camera per microphone. A standard multi-channel sound card or IP driver monitors audio from each studio microphone, and we work natively with Axia systems. Ideally, this will be a post-fader feed from each mic, although you can use pre-fade audio or a mic split if that's all you have available. These audio levels are used to intelligently switch the video feed when each contributor is talking. You can also group microphones together into one shot and use the audio from a mixer's aux bus. You can use Camera One's auto switch feature, or disable it and switch using the on-screen buttons or the buttons on the A10. Recordings can automatically start when you tell the system you're on the air. This on-air indication can be linked to your studio's red lights via IP or an Avantec Adam GPIO interface. You can quickly browse all the videos that have been automatically created during your broadcast, download them and post. Camera One is a user-installable system. You'll need a good spec Windows 10 PC, i7 with plenty of storage and 16 gig of RAM. It's better if this machine isn't used for anything else. Remember, you can control the software in a web browser on another device on your network. Camera One, a thrifty way of creating scroll-stopping video from your show or podcast from Broadcast Bionics.
Camera One, really cool. Lots of other cool software to help you make better radio and visual radio too from Broadcast Bionics. Thanks a lot. We're talking to George Whittam. He is engineer to the Voiceover stars. And George, I know that you have your own favorites and your customers have their own favorites in terms of microphones or maybe other go-to technologies. Let's save the microphones for a minute later. What are some of the technologies or pieces of equipment that oftentimes just fit the bill and work out well for you and your clients?
Yeah, those are sometimes different things, and I'm leaning over right now to grab one piece of gear here because I love show and tell. It's a visual medium we're doing here. So, for those are listening, you can watch this later. But this is the Apollo Twin. Okay, this thing has created more great sounding audio and more consternation and frustration for my clients than anything else. I used to say I'm the Maytag man of audio because once I fix something and set it up for somebody, it usually just works after that. This thing pretty much fulfills that. As hardware, it is a great hardware, really well made. But on the software end, again, just as I said earlier, there are so many things that can go wrong. People update when they shouldn't. iCloud will unsync files, remove things from the computer that should have been on and on and on. And that drives people bonkers. So, but this thing is people love it because they can insert processing and have a chain that they love to use that's all kind of virtualized and is pretty portable. I mean, this isn't ultra portable, but you can still take it with you and get your same chain, whether you have a Manley Voxbox, or some other LA2A or some crazy vintage processing model that you like to use. This thing can do it. On the very, very different end of the spectrum, and this is a unique opportunity because this thing is literally a prototype. There's the Centrance Passport VO, and this thing literally landed in my inbox, my email. How do you email hardware? Let me know. It landed in my FedEx box just 3 days ago. This is a very first working prototype of a new product from Centrance. And I helped co-design and develop this with my brothers at the Pro Audio Suite podcast, which is why it's called the Passport, PAS.
Pro Audio Suite, got it. Mm-hmm.
So this is a dual USB audio interface, meaning that on the base of the unit, there are 2 USB ports. Why is that important? Okay, that's one important thing. I'll get back to that. The other important thing that I'll get right to now is notice there's no screen. Notice there's no, menus. Notice there's no scroll wheels or joysticks or anything of the sort. Every single control on the box is a physical switch or a button. In fact, if I plug it, I have a little tiny microphone that's just I've been using for testing. If I plug this in, you'll see the VU meter working on there. Looks like a breathalyzer.
Yeah.
Or something. You'll see the VU meter. It has a really good VU meter. It has the ability to switch between 2 microphones. So if you've got 2 mics, because so many people do, we'll talk about mics in a minute, so many voice actors have 2 microphones in their studio for different uses. This is super easy to switch between 2 different microphones. There's really no interfaces out there that do this. This is really unique to this product, right? It sounds simple, right? A single button, switch mics. I've never seen it before.
That's the kind of thing you as a manufacturer designer, you've got to be in touch with your customers to know that. And we all just assume somebody's going to have one mic that's their favorite mic. But you're right. I actually have 2 or 3 mics here, and I would love to have a second one here that I could throw one little switch and switch between just for whatever maybe mood or project I was doing. Good idea.
Yeah, there are a lot of ways to switch mics, right? You could have a mixer. You could have you could change inputs in your DAW. You could physically change cables. There's a lot of things, but just the fact that it's a single push button that lets you switch mics, and so you have a little light indicating which input is being used, tiny there you can see. It's so simple, and then you've got 2 gain knobs so you can set and gain balance the 2 mics. You can choose to have high-pass filter engaged on either mic or phantom power on either mic. They have their independent settings right there. That's just a part of what it is. But I was mentioning earlier the double USB interface, and this is what I think is going to be a boon for voice actors, and probably maybe even this could be popular as a fly kit or a go kit or a field reporter kit or whatever that you'd send out with your talent, because it allows for extremely easy separation of recording from communication. So what happens is with 2 USB ports, 1 cable. Now, and this is what's so fascinating. This thing looks like 1 interface, but it's actually 2. So it has 2 totally separate USB AD converters, 2 sets of channel ins and outs, all that are inside this product in the boards. And so when you plug in both cables, your Windows or Mac will see 2 devices, one called Record, Centrance Passport Record, and the other one we call Centrance Passport Comms. Now you're starting to see where I'm coming from. So you set the driver in Adobe Audition to record. You set the driver in Zoom or Chrome or System Sound or whatever to comms. And now the 2 worlds are separated from each other. No more ASIO driver conflicts. No more like, oh, this thing is auto gain controlling my level. What the heck's going on? None of that stuff, because you have this absolute separation of, dare I say the words church and state or whatever you want to say. You have these 2 worlds totally separated from each other, and they can't step on each other. And beyond that, all the mix minuses, and you all know what a mix minus is because you listen to This Week in Radio Tech, all the mix minuses are done for you. So you never have to worry about loopbacks and echoes and all that annoying stuff, right? And then lastly, and I don't want this to sound like a freaking infomercial, but this thing I've been waiting for a year and a half, and it came 3 days ago. So I'm still a little bit gassed up about it, so I apologize. But the other thing it does is allows you to record the return as a second track. So you could have track 1 be your mic, track 2 be the return from comms for doing podcast interviews, things like that. So it will also record both mics as just a stereo mic, or you're sitting down for an interview with somebody and you have 2 mics. Well, now you can record both tracks. So it looks complicated because it has a lot of knobs and switches, but on the inside and how your computer sees it, it's just a pair of inputs. Very, very straightforward. And if you don't use the comms jack, no big deal. You don't have to use it. You can just use a single cable. You can also plug the comms jack into literally a different computer. So let's say you have a dedicated recording workstation. but you don't like to have any phone calls, any Zoom. Maybe that system isn't even on the internet, right?
Right.
Well, now you have another computer plugged into the other USB port. That's the online computer, your whatever it is. Maybe it's an iPad. Maybe it's an iPhone. Maybe it's an Android tablet. I don't know. Whatever it is, that plugs into comms. So anyway, as you can tell, I'm very proud of it. It's still a prototype, and it'll be available probably by holiday time this year. We'll probably finally be able to ship it. But this is something I'm excited about. I think this solves a lot of different people's problems, and I think people are going to love it when they see how it works into their workflow.
I think it's pretty interesting that companies, and that's, by the way, that's called the Centrance Passport, right?
Yeah, with one S. One S. That's right.
Yes,
Passport with one, because it's for Pro Audio Suite. Yeah.
Do you know if there is a web page for it yet?
Oh, yeah. Well, so here's the deal. The only way this thing was able to exist in the first place was Michael from Centrance said to me, literally, put your money where your mouth is, right? If you want us to make this, you need to sell it. So we had to pre-sell 100 units at full price to get, or at least an intro price to get this thing produced. So the bottom line is you can read about it, you can see it, and I think there may be a handful of that pre-sale available still, because we didn't quite hit the quota, but he was like, listen, you guys are obviously selling this thing. Let's greenlight this. So it's at centrance.com/passportvo. So you can read about it there. And by the way, Centrance is like the word entrance with a C stuck in front of it. So it's
we interviewed Michael on our show a few years ago.
He's brilliant, right?
Yeah, it was a great show. Yeah, I want to thank my former colleague and friend Marianne Seidler for introducing me to Michael. And Michael was a guest on our show. He was great. He was absolutely great. So we'll put a link to that in our show notes for today's show.
Yeah,
I wanted to add.
Let's get into the simpler stuff.
I want to sidebar just for a second. This notion of having perhaps talent be connected in two different ways to the two different functions that they're doing. One of them being the contribution audio, the audio that they're like an anchor person, and maybe like during COVID, an anchorman working from home, but also having to do comms with the director, right? And having to hear those comm messages and maybe even speak to that when they're not on the air. And so, although it's a totally different product, totally different workflow situation, the company I work for, Telos, is now making a commentator panel, and these have been around in the industry for some years. But now this one works with the virtual intercom platform, and most intercoms, or many intercoms for years, the audio quality has been crap because it didn't have to be anything but, Bob, I need you to look at camera too. But with the IP-based intercom system using AES-67 or Livewire, you've got perfect audio quality on the intercom, so you can use it for contribution, but the workflow of the contribution audio may not be what you need for the comms portion of it. So now my employer is making a virtual commentator panel, and you can even unvirtualize. You can do it on your phone, but you can also use the Elgato. Is it their Stream? What's the button
the
panel?
Stream Deck? The little button panel?
The one that's got four knobs. The one that's got four volume knobs on it too.
The one with knobs on it. Yeah.
The one with knobs on it. Yeah, the Stream Deck Plus Super, whatever. So that becomes a commentator panel with both contribution and comms capability and buttons appropriate for that at the same time.
That's
so if you're an anchor person and you're trying to talk and you don't want to hear what the guy's trying to yap in your ear, you can shut that off. You shouldn't shut it off very long.
So I love that. This is why I love being on your show, right? Because we have these different worlds that have commonly needed systems that do similar things in different ways with just different terms. You're using the words contribution, your IFB, and all the things that we use in broadcast and radio is different terms in VO. But at the end of the day, if you do have comms coming into your ear, this is the comms return, right? You could just take that comms knob, just back it way down, just so you can just barely hear the comms, but it's not blasting you in the cans, right? And so that was a big thing. A lot of what this thing is about is what you hear as the talent or the on-air staff or whatever you are. This is all about controlling. These two knobs are controlling about, actually, the four knobs at the bottom are all about what you hear, right? So you have that control, you know?
Yeah.
So, and then you have a proper mute button, a cuff switch. Yes. You don't want to be heard right now? There's a proper mute button, right? And that's also valuable. And so many pro audio interfaces for music don't have that. They don't think of that. Why would you have a mute button for a mic input when you're recording a band? No one would ever need that, right? So there's a lot of ways it can be used.
One of the funniest things I've ever seen was years ago when Dave Ramsey, the on-air financial guy, tells you to get two jobs and cut up your credit cards. He's just down the road from us here in Tennessee. He had a custom-made monitor panel for him for years, and he still may have a custom-made, but I'm not sure. But the main knob on that was labeled with two simple words: "More me."
I have literally used that label. I have literally used that label on equipment. Good. You know, because there's another knob on here. This is the monitor mixer, right? So this is how much of your mic you hear in your cans, and how much of what comes back from the computer, right? So this is the more me knob. Like if you turn this toward the mic, it's more me. So
more me?
That literally is what it is. And for a while there, I was like, we should relabel the whole front of this thing so it says more me, things like that. And who knows, we might make custom layer. I found a company who will make custom layout. What do you call it? Like a die cut label that has all the holes in it and everything. So we might do custom labels, that you slap on. It has like more me or logos from the company or whatever, So there's a lot of ways we can have fun with it. But more me is something that talent understands.
And the breathalyzer option, does that cost extra?
Yeah, well, these microphones, Mike from Centrance developed these little guys a number of years ago as a companion to the mixer face. That was another interface he developed 7-8 years ago. That it's the industrial design of that product is really the basis of this one. So this is the actual let's say the AD converters, the preamps, a lot of the basis of what this thing is and how it's designed is on the shoulders of other product that's already been well established, used in production environment for many years, right? So this thing didn't have to come out of whole cloth. We already had a really good precedent for how these things should be designed. And then along the way, he made these little mics, and they're sold as a stereo pair. So normally you would have a left and a right that would create an XY, which now looks like a Zoom or a Tascam, And so that gives you this additional ability to just turn this thing into a handheld voice recorder or a field recorder. What this does not have, I'll mention, is it's not a recorder. It does not have inbuilt SD recording. He has other products that do that. We opted not to have that for packaging purposes. We simply could not get all the features on our absolutely must-have list and squeeze the SD recorder in there and have it all work without concern of overheating or whatever. And so we had to let that go. But there's another one he makes called it's not called the Passport, it's called the Portcaster, which does have built-in recording, right?
Built-in recording.
It's So it depends what you need. But those little mics are cute little electric capsules that you can use. They're clean, they're quiet, but super plosive and wind sensitive. They need to have a big windscreen over them.
I've got to carry one of those in the car, and when I pulled over, I'm just going to hand it and say, "Officer, I'm going to need you to blow into this."
Yeah, it really does look like a little breathalyzer.
No, officer, I'm going to need you to blow into this.
Exactly. Yeah, right. That's going to go over real well.
We got to tease this again. You've got some favorite things to talk about. You said some simpler things, but Suncast is standing by to play a video for us right now, just a little shorty one from one of our sponsors, from Inovonics. This is an amazing company that make the coolest, well-working broadcast stuff, and we're going to talk about their new little tuner, the Model 677 triple tuner. Every broadcaster needs this, especially for your EAS monitoring assignments and equipment. Let's take a look at this from Inovonics.
The 677 Triple Tuner is a monitor receiver in a compact half-rack package. It has 3 built-in SDR-based frequency agile tuners, each one programmable for AM, FM, or weather band reception. Each receiver has a balanced monaural XLR output to provide audio to an EAS monitor or off-air monitor throughout the broadcast facility. It has self-logging alarms that constantly check for audio loss, low signal, RDS-PI mismatch, and EAS alert tones. Online alarm notifications alert personnel with email or SMS messages. The dynamic web interface provides control and monitoring remotely via any web-enabled device. In addition, the 677 has remote listening available via a web stream. It allows up to 10 simultaneous stream listeners, and SNMP is fully supported. Of course, the most important feature for any radio receiver is its reception quality. The 677 handles this like a pro by incorporating a modern SDR-based design for excellent signal-to-noise ratios and rejection even in the most challenging conditions. The 677 is simple to set up with front panel OLED menu and jog wheel, giving you access to 3 selectable tuners. In addition, a built-in web server provides expanded remote setup, operation control, and remote audio monitoring via internet stream. On the front of the 677, there's an LED bar meter to indicate audio output levels, a headphone jack, and LED alarm indicators for each receiver. There's a large OLED display and jog wheel with intuitive menus for easy setup of the 3 receivers and editing over all programming parameters.
And you can check it out from Broadcasters General Store. They are open for business. Checked in with John and Jessica. Even though they're in Ocala, Florida, damage is minimal, and they're all okie dokie. And their website is bgs.cc. BGS, as in Broadcasters General Store.cc. Phone number, they love to hear your phone calls at 352-622-7700. That's where you can get the best deal on an Inovonics 677 triple tuner. Hey, it's Kirk Harnack. This Week in Radio Tech is our show. George the Tech Whittam is here with us, and finally, I know we've been teasing it the whole way. George, you said simpler topics and microphones to me are simple but beautiful. Oh, that's
Aren't
cool.
they?
What is that?
Aren't they?
That looks like the base of my faucet in the kitchen. What is that?
Yeah, well, there's a small company out of New England called Earthworks, and they're really mostly been known for their studio microphones. Their odd design where they use a very small capsule, right? So we're used to these big diaphragm dynamic mics and things like this, but they decided, they tried a microphone that was more broadcast friendly design, and it turned out to be a huge hit. And then what they did was they dropped the price to make it right in line with, guess who? The SM7B. So this thing is designed to compete head-to-head with an SM7B, but it has a much flatter, honest sort of response, right? And that can be a good or bad thing. It depends on how you feel about the sound of the SM7B and et cetera, right? But this thing is a really smooth, relatively flat, uncolored sound. And it has a very, very controlled proximity effect and a really effective pop filter. It's actually a multi-layer filter inside here. So I've used this quite a bit and found it to be really impressive. It looks impressive, and it's a bludgeon. So if you need to defend yourself, this thing is machined out of stainless. This is you see how thick it is between the XLR and the outside of the chassis. That's how thick the chassis is.
My gosh.
It's a honking mic. So that's one I've been loving and playing around with and using off and on, and it's so versatile. Going down into the little bit more entry level point, maybe more voiceover friendly,
Yeah.
You know, I barely even should mention this company because they sure as heck don't need any more promotion. But the Rode company with the NT1 5th gen is an incredibly good entry level, or even dare I say professional quality mic. It's XLR and USB, which is very unusual. Popular. So there's a USB hidden inside the jack. So this thing can work as a very conventional studio mic with your interface, or it can do 32-bit float recording through USB directly into your Mac, and in very limited cases, Windows. If you run, I think Reaper on Windows is capable of actual 32-bit recording, but other apps can't. But that's one that is really impressive and just such a go-to these days because its price point is really affordable, like $250 US, something like that. You know? Okay. And then, and then lastly, shotgun mics, we always talk about them. So that's the obvious. I don't need to get into shotgun mics too much, right? We know that that's a go-to. But another one is the Austrian Audio OC818, which I'll slide off the windscreen. This thing is designed off the shoulders of giants, right? The company AKG that made the C12, which was used all over the place in studios and still is if you're really lucky, or the AKG 414, which is way more common. This kind of takes the place of the 414 now because the company, then the engineers behind AKG microphones were all let go when Samsung bought their parent company, right? So instead of them just losing access to all their intellectual property and their machining and they were able to buy back everything and start a whole new company called Austrian Audio, and that's the company behind this guy. And this is a really nice sounding microphone that has all the controls that you're used to from a 414, different patterns, cardioid, omni, hypercardioid, and figure 8. And then it has a programmable pickup pattern. So you can custom program a pickup pattern to be exactly what you want and can program that pickup pattern over 5 frequency bands. So you can make the bass frequency band more directional, the mids less directional. It's crazy. Yeah, it's really amazing. And even beyond that, it's a double capsule output mic. So if you look on the back, there's a secondary XLR that you can use. It's a little mini 3-pin. That runs into my interface, and now I've got a front and back capsule, which means now you have total control in post over your pickup pattern and all kinds of cool stuff, right? So you can have amazing. You can have the mic's electronics adjust things for you, or you can just record right off each capsule directly and do your own post-pro. If you're into that kind of complicated, you said this is going to be. If you're into that sort of thing, yeah, that's right. Most broadcast voiceovers, things like that, aren't going to do that. But this is a clearly a musician first mic that also doubles as a fantastic voiceover. This is the OC818, and you'll notice the name as a little bit of an homage to the 414. I just figured that out. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, thank you. So, thank you. Yeah, so these are a few mics that I've had chances to demo, use, test, and recommend, and all of them have been great. This one in front of me right now is also an Austrian Audio. This is a handheld, obviously a handheld vocal mic, and I'm using that now as pretty much my everyday podcasting appearance. Doing Zoom calls, it's always right here in front of me, and it runs through the Rodecaster Pro 2 and goes through a chain of processing in there. So that's what you guys are hearing on the air. Nice. Okay, so those are your favorite go-to mics, and I am not intimately familiar with any of those. So good new information. Thank you. Oh, cool. Thank you. We've got limited time. Suncast does have a hard out time today, and we were a little bit late getting started. Let's hit just a couple of things. What's the importance these days? You've got those old Telos Zephyrs on the rack on the shelf behind you. Obviously, back to the days of ISDN connections, real-time back and forth. Recording typically went on at the other end of things, where the high-quality, expensive recorders might have been. So in today's voice
voiceover world, what is the necessity for real-time audio connections, probably over the internet, and what are people using these days to make such connections? What's popular?
Yeah, so it just as I explained earlier, how the voiceover industries, plural, all have very different needs, quality, demands, and things like this. The different industries have different needs for live record, live direction, et cetera, et cetera. So someone might either be solo record and just to be completely working on their own, which is a lot of the voiceover world. It's just, here's a script, you auditioned, you got the job, do the work, right? That's a big part of it. But some of the bigger paying jobs, the bigger production jobs, and definitely commercial work always has directors, so you're listening in. And so that live collaboration is super important. And what people are using, there's one software that's kind of been there, got in early, and has just been sticking it out for many years, even during the ISDN. I was going to say craze. What am I talking about? The ISDN was the thing for 30 years, right?
Years.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly a fad, right?
It's a 30-year fad.
Yeah, Source Connect came along like in the early 2000s and came along as like an alternative to ISDN. It acted as a backup feed for a lot of folks. Then it became sort of I want to travel now. How do I connect to my ISDN box? Well, it's harder to do traveling, but then Source Connect, a friend of mine created a company called Out of Here, and it was a bridging system that I built, and it was all about bridging between Source Connect and ISDN so people could go travel and stay where they wanted and work remotely. So Source Connect, because it got in so early and became a trusted tool, and frankly, people paid for it and installed it in their Pro Tools rigs, that thing is really still a big time, hugely popular tool. But it's not by far the only one. There's a Clean Feed, ipDTL, Session Link Pro, and then there's the hardware IP codecs, like the ones from Comrex, Telos. The ones that the actual hardware codec boxes have not gotten traction in voiceover. And I feel like it's a lost opportunity in a way because, I was saying earlier how I miss the appliance, the thing that just always works, doesn't get software updates, doesn't give you problems, and isn't trying to multitask and browse the web. I kind of miss that. I wish that there was more of a use of hardware codecs for production because of that it just works kind of mentality, And so that is kind of not really gotten traction. Software is kind of the way everything is going now. And so a lot of the work that gets remote directed, I would still say the number one is Source Connect, and then ipDTL, Clean Feed, Session Link. All of them are kind of fighting for a little piece of that market at this point.
Is it ever a workflow where the remote the talent is maybe recording locally because he can in high quality and send the file later, but taking direction via something like Google Meet or Zoom or Microsoft Teams? Is that popular?
Oh, absolutely. Microsoft Teams and Google Meet, even more so Microsoft Teams. And I think Microsoft Teams took off because of the way Microsoft Teams is so deeply integrated into the Office suite and Office 365. And I think it's trusted by corporate networks because it's Microsoft, and the IT department, like the license, they already have the license. You know what I mean? So if you are in the 365 Office sphere, which is a lot of big corporate companies, and then they're not going to muck around with Google Meet. They're not going to use that. They're going to use what they own and what they trust. So Teams is used a lot, and oftentimes I'm setting up people's Apollos and other setups, to seamlessly, connect to Teams. I'm sorry, Microsoft Teams. I get them mixed up. Microsoft Teams. And sometimes it's using the Microsoft Teams app. Sometimes it's using Microsoft Teams in Chrome. It's like a moving target. You never know what's going to be the most reliable thing. But that's a very popular thing. In fact, that kind of a modern day phone patch is basically what we're talking about, is probably the most popular way to remote record a talent. It's not necessarily live audio link to a studio. It's more direction over the internet, record by the talent, send the file on. That is the number one thing.
And since those are so easily joinable by people no matter where they are, you can have a talent in one city, and then you can have directors in different cities and a producer somewhere. You can get direction several different ways. People need to be all the stakeholders can be part of it.
Absolutely.
Right? Hey,
and there's new things coming. Source Connect 4 is coming out, and that's going to make that even easier, so that all the clients can be connected, all the talent can be connected, and the production can be all connected, all through one system without having to integrate Zoom and all these other things. So there's new stuff coming all the time, and that's probably the bleeding edge right now would be Source Connect 4 beta right now.
George, I've got two sponsors that are screaming to have their messages put out here. We got time for a quick tip of the week after this. We're talking to George Whittam. He's the engineer to the Voiceover stars. I would definitely listen to his advice. Our show is brought to you in part by Angry Audio, and this is a couple products that George can put to use in any voiceover studio. One of them is the Headphone Gizmo. The Headphone Gizmo. This is the headphone amplifier made by Angry Audio that is so well designed. First of all, it goes under your counter, or it'll sit on top. Either way. Now, if you sit it on top, the writing's going to be upside down. But you can screw it up under the counter there, and it has both kinds of headphone jacks: the 1/4-inch headphone jack and the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. So either way there, it's got volume control built right onto it. And it is, you can put power in the back of it. There we go. There's a picture of the back. You can put 16 volts AC. It comes with the power adapter, or you can power it over the Studio Hub power scheme, which gives you plus and minus 15 volts DC on the RJ45 connector. So it's got Studio Hub connectors on there. So you can daisy chain these if you want to. You can have 2 or 3 or, I think you can have up to 3 of them on one power supply and power them either by the power supply or by the Studio Hub power. Now, the other thing I like about these, and, Catfish gave me a lot of trouble for saying this just one time too often, so I'll say it once again. You see the smooth metal cabinet on this thing? You won't snag your pantyhose on this. George, good for you to know. You won't snag your pantyhose on this, and neither will your clients, because it's nice and smooth. If you do bump your knee or your thigh against this under the counter, you won't scream out in pain. You'll feel it gently against your leg before it causes any pain. So check it out. It's the Headphone Gizmo. Beautiful headphone amp here from Angry Audio. Also, their headphone disconnector. This is a very, very valuable little piece of genius from Angry Audio. The headphone disconnector, it's like a MagSafe connector for your headphones. So if you forget you're wearing the headphones and you get up and walk away, you don't strangle yourself, and you don't break that connector off in the headphone jack. It just comes apart with a magnet. It's so cool. Why hadn't this been built for years? I don't know. But it took Catfish at Angry Audio to figure this out, and it works incredibly well. I love these things. Got a bunch of them at my radio stations. Thanks, Angry Audio. AngryAudio.com. Our show's also brought to you by our friends at Max Connect Wireless. Max Connect Wireless. These are the guys that one of the things that they do, and they got on the map quickly for this, is by doing reliable 4G LTE data, and it's prioritized data. And that means that whether you're at a transmitter site, well, you won't have a crowd around the transmitter site, but let's say you're at a stadium and you're doing a live broadcast, and there's 60,000 people in the stadium, and they all get on their Facebook or their Insta at the same time, or their TikTok, or whatever they're doing, their Snapchats, you still have the same amount of data bandwidth as you did before the game started, before all those people got there, because you have prioritized 4G LTE data. And that means you can do a live remote broadcast using Max Connect Wireless, and you can do it on several different networks, AT&T, T-Mobile, or Verizon. Look at that graphic right there. Check this out. You got a transmitter site, and you need to get reliable data out there, and you can't get fiber or anything else out there. Well, use a Max Connect LTE router, and you can get a telephone out there. You can get a PC out there. You can connect your IP audio codecs to your transmitter, your mod monitor, your security camera, all that, and run that through your Max Connect LTE router. And guess what? It can be the main connection, or it can be a backup. If you've got some other internet out there at the transmitter site, like satellite internet, that could be the main if you like, and then have the LTE take over if the satellite receiver dies, or if you get snow in it or something like that. So Max Connect Wireless has so many options for you, more than I can tell you about here, including including phone service at your transmitter site via 4G LTE. Check it out, Max Connect Wireless at maxconnect.com. There's links in the show notes. Thanks a lot, Josh Bone, the inventor of, the putter together of all this stuff. All right, we got just a minute, George Whittam, for a tip of the week. What wisdom can you leave us with?
Well, first of all, I'm buying some of those adapters. Good on you, Angry Audio. the headphone breakaway. Those things are damn smart. That is really, really awesome. Tip of the week. I'll leave you with this one. If you want software to record voiceover that isn't heavy and doesn't have a big learning curve, you're not going to find it by probably Google searching, or you're not going to find it on the App Store unless you really dig. But this is one of these programs that you can only find by word of mouth, and it's because I guess he just doesn't want to blow money on ads yet. But anyway, if you want to check out an application that's really light and very friendly and easy to learn and super clean and a beautiful interface, I would definitely check out Twisted Wave. Twisted Wave has been there since the beginning of my voiceover setup career, almost from the beginning, nearly from the beginning. And he's finally ported it over to Windows now. So Windows people are not left out and can also run Twisted Wave. But I love Twisted Wave. I just really do. I think the developer listens to the users like I've never seen before. About once a year, he does a huge survey and says, what do you guys want? What do you really, really want? And so he's like, and he releases new features and puts them in. But, the key thing that why it feels professional to me is that it looks essentially identical to what it did 10 years ago, right? You just know it's going to feel and look the same year after year. He's not feature creeping. It doesn't have tons of new features and bells and whistles. He just keeps it running smoothly, debugging it and keeping it up to speed with whatever the OS company, Microsoft and Apple throw at him. And that's what I love about it. So it's sort of like Audacity that you do pay for in a weird way, like, wait, why it's free? Well, remember I said the support is fantastic. So that's my little tip again, not making anything from this at all. I've set up so many people and trained so many actors with it, and you don't need Logic, you don't need Pro Tools, you don't need Reaper, you don't need anything complicated. This thing is really clean and slick, and I love it. So
nice. I need to check it out some more. I know that we used to use it on a phone, right? On Apple phones.
They still have phone versions. Exactly. It's to do.
Nearly live remotes. We would do a break, like I want to say some of our guys years ago were at a Taylor Swift concert in Little Rock, Arkansas, and they did some breaks, uploaded FTP'd automatically, and went on the air automatically a few minutes later. So it was better than trying to coordinate them live. They just went on the air a few minutes later with Twisted Wave.
Sometimes that's the best way to go. Sometimes truly live is not the way to go.
Not necessarily. George, we got to go. Suncast has got to go. George, I appreciate you so much. And George, I will send you an email address to send to notify Suncast about your audio file. So, and I'll do the same thing too.
Sounds
if
good.
You can have that somewhere where he can grab it. Suncast, thank you so much for your excellent work today in getting our podcast worked out. We appreciate that. Our show this week in Radio Tech, we got some great sponsors. Please be kind to them. And coming up next week, we're going to have a really interesting gentleman as our guest, Edward Glab from Chicago of WLS fame. He's a studio engineer, and he's going to have some good stories for us. All right. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.